Hello and welcome to another episode of the Opus WealthStyle podcast. My name is Iván Watanabe. I'm here with my partner, Evan Wohl. Evan, what's going on, brother? How are you?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here. How you doing?
I'm great, man. I'm great. So we're going to be talking today about recent conversations that we are having, with, it seems like everybody these days, all of our clients that are looking to purchase homes. How do they evaluate whether or not this is the right time, the wrong time, and all the different decisions that kind of go into it. So I think it was an opportunity for us to just kind of share the dialogue that we've been having, and hopefully we can help the listening audience kind of come to their own conclusions as well. So, Evan, where do you want to start?
Yeah. So, like you said, I must have this conversation once a week. Everyone is, and I think now, we're recording this beginning of May 2023. A lot of people were putting the home purchase on pause as interest rates shot up so dramatically, and now they're starting to realize, well, it's probably just where it is for at least a little while. And so, if you want to buy that next home or the first home, then it is what it is, right? And so we have to start to make those have those decisions. And so the guidance that or the conversations that I'm having with clients, I always say it's generally two primary decisions as it relates to the financial side of it, right? Not which town you want to move to and stuff like that. But from the financial aspect, it's what is your liquidity look like after the down payment, right? So and typically it's 20% down is the recommendation to avoid mortgage insurance. And so then after the 20% down, what does your cash position look like? How much money do you have on hand to fund decorating the home and making sure you can go buy a few couches and TVs, et cetera? And then the second consideration is how big is the mortgage relative to the household gross income? And household gross income, I always say, should include bonuses, commissions, although those tend to be variable. And so, try to choose a realistically conservative number. And so, that's generally where the conversations start, and they tend to evolve from there. What about you? What's the primary guidance that you're giving people these days?
Yeah, similar. I mean, it's all based off of, like you said, what's the liquidity look like at post purchase, and then also how does it impact their general cash flow, right? So, with mortgage rates where they are compared to where they were, just trying to evaluate, how much of a house should they be buying? How does this impact their cash flow? And really just sort of also the longevity of where they're going to be, right? Is this the forever home? Is this a home that they are purchasing because they really just feel anxious about, no longer renting? And when do they think they're going to either upgrade or move on from this home, right? So that definitely has an impact, I think, on the way we view whatever mortgage they're going to select.
Yeah.
Right. So, if this is the forever home, or that's at least what they anticipate it to be, then we're happy with a longer stretch, of a mortgage, keeping it sort of level. But if they think they're going to be out of this place in a couple of years, really evaluating what's the different, the proper strategy and how does it impact their cash flow, right? I think that cash flow piece is really what we're walking every client through, because that's what they really want to know. Hey, can we afford this house, right? And the affordability always comes out of the cash flow, not out of, frankly, anything else.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's coming up with the 20% down payment is usually less of an issue. Not always the case, but usually, and the bigger variable is what do the property taxes look like? Because that's really what's impacting the mortgage payment, right? Yep. So everyone would love to like give us a number. What's the budget that we shouldn't go over? and we can't really do that because the mortgage payment is gonna change based on property taxes. And so the guidance I typically tell people is try to get a mortgage at or below 15% of annual gross income. And so, you take the total monthly mortgage payment, including insurance, property taxes, et cetera, multiply that by 12. And then is that 15% or lower of the combined household gross income, again, inclusive of conservative bonus and commissions estimates.
Yeah.
And the reason I say 15 is because maybe 95% of the time people go over that, right? And so if we come to a number of, all right, this will get us to 15, and then they find the perfect house that's just absolutely perfect, then they, then it's 20%, right? And so then they come back to me and say, well, can we do 20%? And the conversation I have there is, if you expect your income to continue to rise over the next few years faster than the rise in property taxes, then even if you're starting at 20%, over the next few years, that percent will come down.
Yeah.
So principal and interest payments will stay level, assuming it's a, fixed mortgage, 30 or even 15-year fixed. The property taxes, typically, they don't go down. They typically, just go up over time. And so if you think your household gross income is going to grow faster than the taxes, then that percentage will come down over time. And so what that means is, the first year, if you're stretching yourself thin, the first year, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel maybe a little bit more stress or anxiety around your finances, because the majority of your what otherwise would have been free cash flow is now going into the home. And so it's going to take you a few years to get used to that, let your income catch up, and then start to allocate that free cash flow elsewhere.
Yeah, we're seeing, excuse me, I'm definitely recommending this similar percentage, and also adding in the, and we've talked about cash flow previously and how important it is to save. And when we look at cash flow, we want to get our clients to save 20% of their gross income at least.
Yep.
Whatever else they do with sort of the rest of it is kind of up to them, right? I don't really, I always make the joke, like, if you light it on fire, I don't really care. That's not really true. But, in general, if they're saving their 20 to 25% and then can still afford the house with the delta along with the other expenses, then I'm comfortable with it right now.
Right.
Granted, it's a little bit of a gray area because the mortgage is going to be fixed. It's not like they can stop paying that, or, they can reduce lifestyle in some other way. Like, your mortgage is your mortgage. You have to pay that every single month. But in general, if they're able to continue to save that 20 to 25%, then God bless them. They're, more than willing to, or more than happy to afford the mortgage with the balance. So,
yeah. What about the fact that bigger homes typically come with bigger expenses, whether it's the lawn and, who knows what, I got a bug guy, I got a poison ivy, company, I got it all. Are you having that conversation to build that in? And because that's really just the big unknown of, you think you're just calculating the mortgage, but in reality, there's so much more that goes into owning a home, and the bigger, the more expenses.
Yeah, it's funny. We always have this conversation, and I think it's one of the often forgotten about parts of our conversation.
Yeah.
When we kind of go through these metrics, and then people say, oh my God, like, this broke, and then I got to put a new roof, and this thing happened and that thing happened. And I'll, gently remind them, like, we talked about this, right? Houses in general are kind of money pits. Like, they are never ending, right? Like, I've got as you said, lawn, bug, water treatment, taxes, we want to put a playground in, we need to do this, like, all of this stuff adds up over, and you just can't possibly anticipate what those costs will be. But, as long as we are still saving within that range, we've got to anticipate some type of buffer for everything. Like, if you're really running your cash flow and that thing is like right on target with what is acceptable for you, you may want to be easy on some of those extra expenses in year one until that income continues to grow a little bit, right? And to keep up. But I get nervous when those numbers are super close.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. When people are stretching thin, I say, don't feel like you should or need to decorate this home, top to bottom within the first few months. You're gonna, buy what you need bare minimum, and then, do it over time. Take your time with it. And, is there a more depressing thing to spend money on than a new roof or a hot water heater or, AC unit? Like, and these things cost so much money. And it's just the thought of having all that money leave your account to not really enjoy it. Like, windows are absurdly expensive.
Yeah. And again, it's part of our role, right? As sort of the advocates and advisors for our clients to have these types of conversations, because, you want to have this dialogue before they make the decision versus after, right? And we can say it until, our job is not to tell our clients how to spend their money, but to really say, listen, like, you're on the upper stretches of what we think is reasonable. That may mean delaying the purchase of again, outfitting this whole house. Like, are you guys comfortable with that? And we have to be very clear with what the expectations are. And ultimately it's their decision to make it. And it's a tough one to buy the house and then have rooms unfurnished or to not have it the way you want it to be. But, there may be give and take for folks depending on how tight that cash flow is when they make that purchase. And some of it comes from interest rates rising, right? So that impacts the general cash flow from where it previously was. Some of it has to do with, and I don't know how often you're running into this, but like bidding wars now in the real estate market, right? When, the inventory was tight or people were just throwing crazy numbers at houses and hoping that they would get this, and people were getting it. So that's the other aspect of this, right? Is the actual purchase of the home. Like, where are you guys with buying the house? Are you overpaying it? Is it even worth that? Are you running into that often too? Are you having those conversations?
I mean, especially if they, they're going to see a house that's like slightly over budget, right? But like, it looks nice. And then you go in and they fall in love with it. And then it's an emotional thing from there, right? It's no longer logical. I had clients, good friends of mine, reach out to me just kind of freaking out, while I was on vacation. They just they put a bid on a home, probably maybe more than double the size of their existing home. And, they're financially responsible. So in the end, they will be just fine. But it's scary for them. Right. And so they were texting and calling me and saying like, oh my God, I don't know if we can do this or we should do this. And they knew that they were stretching themselves a little thin. And so if you go into it with that, with that understanding, at least you're not going to get blindsided. You talked about give and take, and the give and take is not just, give it a little time to furnish the whole place. It could also be give and take on, maybe you have to dial back the 401k contribution for a little bit, or, as you get closer to a home purchase, you want to build up liquidity. So instead of putting more and more to investments, retirement accounts, other even maybe private investments that have less liquidity, you got to start just stockpiling cash and get ready for that. And so that's also a constant conversation, is how close are we getting to a possible down payment, and how do you best position yourself for that? And the answer is liquidity. It's cash is king.
No question. Yeah. And it also helps with the mortgage application process, right? Now I had that same exact conversation with a couple of clients last week. We were having some dialogue around the cash position, and just saying, listen, you've got to dial back the 401k, not for forever. But, temporarily. Right. And this is really, again, based off of your priorities, which is getting this house, right? The house that you love, getting this house, then we need to dial back on that for a period of time. And then again, we'll refund that. Refund that strategy. But I just think, these days, with the home being such an emotional purchase, we had to really have some dialogue with folks to say, that's an irresponsible amount of money to pay above the actual value of the house. Right. Most people, I find, void of like COVID freak prices, do not actually make money from their primary residence. When you build in all of the maintenance and the tax and the upkeep and the mortgage interest, like, don't actually make money off their primary residence. Right.
If you think of your investments, all investments have fees associated with it. Right. And so if you think about your real estate, you can think of all those extra expenses as fees, as just like added expense that's just going in. It's just sucking away any, profits or rates of returns.
Yeah.
And they're not even deductible, right? Like, you can't deduct these expenses. So it's, you definitely need to take it into account. What about, the interest rate environment right now? I imagine you're having a lot of clients, as I am, of, is now the right time? What should we do? It's a quote unquote awful, interest rate environment relative to where it's been, which, that's fair. But what do you do about it?
Yeah, it's funny because, when you think about where rates were, just a couple of years ago, I think I got a 30-year fixed at 2.75. It was like free
Unreal.
money, right?
Unreal.
I got super lucky.
Yeah.
And those that were able to get mortgages in that time frame were able to take advantage of something that is historic lows.
Hmm.
Now the conversation is literally trying to recalibrate expectations around what a reasonable mortgage rate is,
Hmm.
right? Everybody is basing their conversation off of a couple of years ago when it was all time historic lows, right? I don't necessarily know if we're ever going to get back to that place anytime soon. And that's why that refinance conversation of I can lock in a mortgage today and hopefully I can refinance in a couple of years. Like there's nothing to indicate that rates will go back to sub 3%, right? And it's really funny. I'll just share this quickly. I kind of pulled this up, is taking a look at historical average mortgage rates. So if you were to look at the average 30-year fixed, it's 7.75% across the life of sort of 30-year fixed mortgages, right? 7.75%. I remember when I first got into the business, if you had a sub 6% mortgage, it was like gold.
Hmm.
Right? And when our
Look at that
parents,
peak in the,
yeah,
what's that, in the mid
mid
80s,
80s
right?
or
Something like that.
early
My
80s.
my parents bought their first mortgage in 1986, I think, maybe
Yeah,
88 or something like that. They had I think it was an 18% mortgage.
yeah,
I mean, it's absurd, an 18% mortgage.
yeah.
And then my dad always loves to tell me that the next year, he turned around and went and got a 21% auto loan for his car.
Yeah.
And it should have been illegal, but
Yeah,
it's absurd. That was
it's
reality for most of America.
yeah, it's wild. I mean, it just, again, hopefully they won't get anywhere
No.
close to that anytime soon, right? But the truth is that, mortgage rates in the mid fives is, a reasonable historical average 30-year fixed rate, right?
Is that what you're seeing right now? Mid five, mid high fives for a 30-year?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So as of last week, that's what some of my clients were getting quoted. So, that
So it's come
obviously
down.
could
I think it's
change.
come down a little bit, right?
It has.
It was like mid sixes, maybe a couple of months ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and again, it just, think about things in context, right? But for a longer time span. And when you're making decisions around purchasing, you can't make them based off of all time lows.
Yeah.
And I also really think that folks need to think about what is the longevity of the piece of property that they are buying,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that they're making their mortgage decisions based off that. I don't love the idea of people going into a mortgage thinking I'll be able to refinance in 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
When you're at that place, like who the heck knows what is going on in your life? Who knows what's going on in the markets? Who knows what's going on in the mortgage markets, interest rates? Like, I caution people to keep more of a global view of their ability to refinance in a few years, because we don't know what that's going to look like. And they're basing their decisions off of the hope that things will go back down to sub 3.
Yeah. There's no question. A 30-year fixed mortgage is going to be the most conservative way to go. And then you have clients that look at adjustable rate mortgages. And like you said earlier, if they're confident that they're going to be selling the home in the next, 7 to 10 years, maybe, I think that makes more sense for them. But just to rely on interest rates to drop in the future, maybe they will, maybe they won't. It's hard to say.
Yeah. I think for me, the other piece that's really made things extremely difficult for many clients is the opportunity to buy properties on the investment side as an investment, right? Because the numbers with mortgage rates creeping up, this is a primary resident sort of mortgage rate at 5.5. Maybe investment properties are 7.5.
Mm-hmm.
It impacts the bottom line, right?
Mm-hmm.
The actual sort of potential for to get a return on that investment, shrinks. And then if you're in markets like Florida, where the homeowners insurance is skyrocketing, right? Then that makes the profit margin like basically non-existent, right? And it seems like there's a lot of people out there that are investing in, property and real estate that are actually net negative on a cash flow basis every month, hoping somehow that turns around or that the property value increases. But, you know, really kind of evaluating this, I think, on an ongoing basis is tough when rates are where they are.
And I think that speaks to a future conversation that we'll have, which is of asset location, not just having, you know, such a giant percentage of your assets in real estate, you know, residential real estate, rental real estate, whatever the case may be. But, you know, it's important to spread it around.
Yeah. I think we're to kind of recap this, right? So the major sort of common themes between the conversations that we are having, right, are make sure that you evaluate the cash flow, both from you know, what's the net percentage that this purchase represents in my cash flow, and right, you're using a 15% as your sort of target piece. And also, you know, if we're able to save 20% of our income and still have the house and still save and live the rest of our lifestyle, I feel like that's a really good healthy personal economy.
Right. Back into the mortgage, to the number of the mortgage based on saving 20%. Like start with that, save, you know, pay yourself first, and then find out, you know, what does that mean for how much you could spend on a mortgage?
Yeah. I think, you know, lastly, I think just really, you know, the one piece that gets forgotten about is that folks sort of focus on the numbers of how much the house is or the mortgage rate or that piece, but also how much do you love the house?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I really want, if you're buying this primary residence, like don't just buy a piece of real estate to buy the home because you don't want to rent any longer. I don't know if you're having that dialogue with clients either, but you know, I'm really just having people not get caught up in the fact that they are renting or, you know, bought a place and they're in between places. Like really, if you're in this market, you know, buy a place that you really love, not one that you sort of think you can tolerate for a period of time. I don't know what your take is on that.
Because you think it's the right thing to do for your finances.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, when I have the conversations with clients about what is the age at which you're on track for retirement, and their, you know, a home purchase is looming in the next, few years, what I always say is that, you know, typically the home purchase in the short term will hurt your liquidity, right? You take a whole bunch of money that you currently have access to, you put it into your real estate, no longer have access to it unless you're opening up a home equity line of credit, which is a, you know, generally good practice to do, but not always feasible. Banks even right now are tightening up a lot on that front. And so you want to think of your real estate as less of an investment, because in the short term, it's going to hurt your liquidity. In the long term, it is going to help your retirement, assuming, you know, you get a traditional 30-year mortgage, you stay at the house for a long time, you pay off the mortgage, then your living expenses in retirement just gets a lot lower, right? Again, but another assumption there is that you're staying in the home in retirement. So there's a lot of assumptions there, but in general, I find home purchase from a financial standpoint hurts your liquidity, and sometimes your cash flow in the short term. It'll help retirement income planning, but you know, that's way down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, with the assumption that you're going to be in this thing for a long time, right?
Yeah.
You know, I, in particular in our age demographic, right? Late 30s, early 40s,
Mm-hmm.
there's this, and maybe even younger, there's this need to buy a home. And that seems to be changing with the youngest generation of sort of income earners, right? But like in our demographic, it's like a box that everybody seems very, you know, in a rush to check off.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And we, you know, Joanna and I kind of made a plan where we rented for a long time. Right. I mean, I've rented for 13 years or something like that before we decided to build the home, but it was because that's what we wanted as a family, not because I think this is like the greatest investment. We happen to get super lucky with timing and interest rates and all those kinds of things, but and it ended up working out extremely well. But you know, I didn't look at this as sort of an investment, right? I looked at this as a lifestyle choice for my family, and incorporated in that decision is sort of us wanting to be here for a long period of time. And then again, cash flow wise, making sure we can do all of the other things that we want to do. So
you can't control the future of mortgage rates, the real estate market, you know, make the best decision for your family and stay balanced as it relates to your cash flow and liquidity.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, again, Evan, I love having the conversation with you. I know you're doing great work with your clients, and for you, the listening audience, thanks for tuning in. We look forward to hearing from you soon. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Don't forget, click subscribe below to be notified when we have new podcast episodes released. Talk soon.